Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you're tuning in, thank you for stopping by. This is the Martell Group Fireside Chats, where each week we sit down with an industry expert and get their unique perspective on the world through the lens that we all know as sales and marketing. On today's Fireside Chat, we're joined by Meredith Slemko, the Director of Ecommerce over at Kenvue. Now, Meredith has a rich history in sales, marketing, insurance, and even a little bit of entrepreneurial flair thrown in on the side. Have a listen.
I think about my own career in this space is being open to opportunities to learn, having that natural curiosity and following it. Don't be rushed to drive to the top. Take those lateral moves to just grow your base and what I would refer to as the pyramid of your career. The stronger the foundation that you build, the more stable you are at the top. And so take your time and learn and leverage that curiosity.
Now, in today's chat with Meredith, we dive into topics such as how to keep your axe sharpened, how social skills play a part in your sales cycle, and ultimately, how to stay hungry for new opportunities. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Martell Group Fireside Chat. Great to have you all back here once again. I'm joined here today by a nice special guest, the Director of Ecommerce, for Kenvue, Miss Meredith Slemko. She is, like I said, the Director of Ecommerce over at Kenvue, has a rich history both in the sales and the marketing world, and even has a little bit of a entrepreneurial background too, I saw, right? Kind of reading through some things on LinkedIn and whatnot. So excited to dive into this conversation. But first off, Meredith, welcome. So great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and jump in before we get into some of the questions and learning about you, which I definitely want to take some time to do here. If you wouldn't mind, walk us through like a little bit of background, who you are, who you represent. Tell us about Kenvue. Give us just like a little bit of a background on who Meredith is.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. So I have spent the last 12 years with Kenvue, previously known as Johnson & Johnson. And I have had a career across the commercial functions of sales, marketing, and now e-commerce. Prior to that, I actually worked in sales in an insurance company. And so it set me up well for this sort of jump into consumer products, which is where I am now. But my journey has mostly been in the commercial function, sales and marketing. Right now, I currently manage our end-to-end e-commerce business. So I manage our Amazon, all our omni customers, we refer to them as well as our last mile partners, our partners like Instacart and Uber Eats and DoorDash, and our business with them in Canada. So I actually grew up in Canada. So I'm here just outside of Toronto, and I currently have 2 kids, 6 and 3. And so that is my life. I'm sure you can imagine, very busy, but very exciting.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that background. And I know you didn't touch on it too much, but I want to just highlight real quick too. You own kind of like a coffee bar or smoothie bar, something like that in downtown Toronto. Is that right?
Yes. So, we like to flex other interests in our lives. But it was a foray that I was sort of part of with my husband. Mm-hmm. We invested in an ice lounge in Toronto called Chill Ice House. And it was a family company and opened up a location in Toronto, which was amazing. You learn a lot. And then in the front, I personally opened up a coffee and smoothie bar. So it was actually during my mat leave. Mm-hmm. And it was just a fun opportunity to test that entrepreneurial spirit.
Gotcha. Kind of adding some tools to the tool belt, right? You have this background, in sales and in marketing, and you get a little entrepreneurial portion on the side. I'm sure that just kind of helps sharpen the axe around the board, right?
Absolutely. And all I really wanted to know is how to make a mean Americano. Ooh. So mostly did it just for that.
Now I really want a cup of coffee. So I think I know what I'm doing as soon as we finish this recording.
Yeah, perfect.
I love that. I'm kind of curious how you got started in all of this, right? Your sales and marketing, are very intertwined in my opinion. I'm sure that they are with you as well. But you mentioned kind of getting started in insurance and then kind of moving over to Kenvue for the previous 12 years. Where did all this begin with you, Meredith?
When I was in insurance, I was direct to customer sales. So the true sales where you're cold calling, you're with the customer, and your objective in your job is to learn what the customer wants, and fit your product to their needs.
Hmm.
What I really wanted to do was level it up to a more strategic selling career, and so I actually went back to school, completed my MBA, and through that secured a role with Johnson and Johnson in a sales leadership development program. So springboarding off of the direct to customer selling that I had, and really focusing on leveling that up to strategic selling. And so through that 2 years in the rotational leadership program, I learned all the attributes of the many selling functions of
Hmm.
a CPG on the business to business side of it. So it really it was an amazing pivot, and it just allowed me to elevate some of those skill sets. And through the time in sales, there's so many selling functions. There's
Hmm.
customer strategy, there's selling strategy, there's direct to customer, the account management side. There's a category solutions selling. There's shopper marketing. There's so many careers within sales. And sometimes people say, "Oh, sales," and get a bit scared, or they have a
Right.
perception of what that means. And I love the idea of rewriting that, and really creating some real understanding of what a career in sales is like.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm sure taking like different aspects of this is kind of what helps you not only shape, the role that you're in, right? Because being the director of e-commerce, I'm sure that requires you to have a lot of these multiple skills that you've learned over the years, but also, you're able to kind of start building your own kind of pathway in a way, right? You're able to kind of say, hey, I have the ability to do this and this and this, and here's what makes me unique, right?
Yeah. When you think about, I mean, the work that we do in building brands is really the best way is having a full commercial lens on how we go to the market. So,
Yeah.
um, I might add in my career, so maybe I'll just go back a little bit. Started in the rotational program, learned a few different attributes of sales, then worked in traditional account management, worked with some of our big retailers in Canada. Then I actually moved over to marketing. So I did a marketing role,
Okay.
brand management for a bit. And then I did customer strategy, which is sort of the merger between sales and marketing.
Hmm.
And so, from that end to end foundational understanding, it's all about our consumer and how we want to go to market with our brand. So, whether
Hmm.
you're selling or whether you're in brand management, it is all about building your brand's relevance in your consumer's mind. So, from a brand perspective, you're building that mental availability. You want to be top of mind. From a selling perspective, you want to be physically available for consumers to buy. So, the more traits and skill sets and understanding that you put yourself in across the full commercial end to end makes you stronger in that selling function or that traditional commercial function.
Yeah, totally curious. Do you have a side that you'd prefer, or that you enjoy more working on? I'm not trying to like pitch you against yourself or anything, but you've got a sales start, jumped over to marketing, kind of going back and forth and blending the two together, which I love that, and I think that personally for me, I think that that's something everyone should experience at least once.
Yes.
Learning both of those skill sets, but between working on the selling and go to market strategy and working on the brand strategy, do you have one that you prefer working on more than the other, or at least enjoy a little bit more?
Yes, you're not the first person to ask me that. They're both so unique. I prefer the selling function. I love the direct to consumer interaction. I love understanding my customers.
Hmm.
I love the ability to execute quickly. Brand is amazing. It is a longer term strategic build of your
Sure.
brand presence. But the best part about e-commerce, where I'm in right now, is it's becoming more of a merger of those two functions because you're directly responsible for the sales that are selling on these platforms,
Hmm.
but you are so integrated with the digital media for which you have to activate against. So the world is really putting these functions together in this space,
Hmm.
and I'm well positioned, but also I'm passionate about it as well.
Passion is probably something, it, like you just said, something that you have for this space and have for the function of your role in your company and all that other sort of stuff. Passion is something that is, at least in my thought, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this too. Passion is something that, you kind of get over time for whatever role that you're in, right? You don't just pick up something and say, I'm passionate about this water bottle. That's not exactly how it works. So how did you get to that point to be passionate about what you do? You've gone through this journey, and what about e-commerce or about the customers or about the products? Where's the passion behind everything that you're doing at the end of the day?
I think there's probably three things that have driven it for me.
Okay.
Number one is, am I am I working with products and brands that are truly making a difference in people's lives? And
Okay.
so I joined Johnson and Johnson. We own brands like Tylenol, Band-Aid, Polysporin, Nicorette, helping people quit smoking. Truly brands that enhance the ability for everyday consumers to help their lives. Baby products, Tylenol pediatrics for children, which I have used a lot of, and I'm sure you will do the same.
Yep.
But you want to know that you're working behind a brand that really makes a difference in someone's life and can save lives at home. So that's number one, working with products you love. Number two is the people. CPG is such a fast-paced, competitive but fun place to be in. From an industry perspective, you learn so much. But it's the people. So if you work on great teams that support each other, I love the people I work with. They're brilliant. They're strategic. They make everyone better together. So I think it's really about the people. And so like the brands, the people, and just the ability to make a difference. So when I'm at work, I feel the impact of my decisions, and really support my team to feel the same. So, are you touching the business? Are you making an impact? Can you feel that? Can you see it? Like the ability to do that on a big organization is so inspiring. So
Yeah.
I think those three things working together is what makes me passionate every day.
I love that answer, because there's a couple different things that you can dissect from that, right? And the biggest thing that I'm interested in diving into is your team now. So you have kind of translated, right, about your passion behind it and a couple different reasons why. The people is one thing in particular that you mentioned, and kind of building a sales team and building a marketing team that's behind you or standing with you to kind of help drive your mission, your goals, whatever that is forward. How would you recommend, or what's your method for keeping that up when kind of like training and continually educating your team?
I love this question because I'm so passionate about people. And I think I've learned so much growing in my career. As you start as an individual contributor in your space, you execute, you work hard, you grow with the organization. And then you hit this point of it's no longer about your contributions, but your people. And so your role is really about unlocking their capabilities and removing barriers for them to do what they are designed to do, what they can do, or to realize their true potential. So I think when I look at my team, and what we look for in success is I'm heavier, less on the technical side of selling, and more on, I look for sort of four things as we build a high performing team, is especially in the ecom space. I'm gonna suggest as well, but in this space is number one, curiosity. So I love a team that is just a natural sense of curiosity. Because if you have the confidence to ask questions and be out there and just look to understand, through that, you build so much more than you think. It's not just about what you're learning, but you're breaking down barriers and connecting with individuals and trying to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But you dig in. So I think that's really important for me. Number two is resiliency. So you're going to get a lot of no's, and that is not just a sales thing. That's an organizational thing. And life is, and your job is to push the project and your ideas through and work through that. So resiliency is being able to get back up and continue to push forward if you truly believe in your projects, your work streams, your thoughts. And number three is hunger. You can't be in sales without knowing that there is a target. But especially in the e-com space, we are changing the trajectory of where we sell products, how we sell products, how we reach consumers, and there's a lot of capability building through that. And so there's going to be aspirational goals for which you want the team to be like excited and hungry for. And I'd say the last thing that really comes to me personally, but is just empathy and understanding that the people on your team are all working together. So It's not about me, it's about we. And how do I watch my team members put each other in each other's shoes, or their cross-functional partners' shoes, to truly understand how to get the job done or where they're coming from. Because you're going to start building allyship across the organization and with your team if you can understand that empathetic part of a team. So, anyways, those four things, like those are most important to me, and the attributes for building a high performing team, and then the rest will come through technical knowledge and so
Yeah.
forth. So,
I like that. I like that. And there's a lot of different like technical skills and things like that I'm sure that your teams have to keep up with, especially in something
yeah,
that's as
yeah,
fast paced as what you guys do, right? You've got those kind of like four pillars, let's call them, right? You got those four
yeah.
pillars to your team and their development, just in their careers, their career advancement, like whatever they want to do with their careers and everything like that. On the technical side, though, what are the skills? What are the maybe like daily, weekly, monthly type things that you are always asking your teams to kind of keep up with outside of like product knowledge and maybe like negotiation or brand strategy? Like how are you keeping your teams as sharp as they need to be on top of their four pillars that they have?
On the sort of the technical side, I'd say industry knowledge expertise is a key pillar to the Kenvue way, which is always outside in. So we build our strategies on what's happening with our consumer, our customer. So, we constantly want to ensure that we're up to speed on what's happening with our customer, both to understand them from a selling perspective, but also as a company, because it will direct how we go to market, innovation planning, capabilities, switch in strategic resources. And so we really want to be as agile as possible in bringing that information in. On the other piece, you mentioned negotiation, but it's really about, we come back to the drawing board every month on like what's your stakeholder mapping? How are you integrating yourself with
Oh,
the customer?
okay.
What individuals are there? How do we want to make sure we build relationships with them? Because on the selling side, you really want to foster that customer trust and that relationship, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
will accelerate both of us together through the joint business process. So we come back to the drawing board on like, how are your touch points? How are you working with your customer? Is there any support you need? Any barriers removed so that you can really ensure we foster that? So I think that's a big piece in the selling space that's top of mind. And then outside of that, we obviously have formal processes within Kenvue that help
Sure.
support various development needs within the journey. Um, Everything from analytics training to negotiation training to own the room, executive communication, or it could be just overall coaching on language skills or so on and so forth. And that's sort of a fundamental part. We ensure that each individual completes that every year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's shaped through what needs that you really need
Yeah.
to sharpen for that following year. Yeah,
Yeah. And I'm sure that that's very helpful too for your team because not everyone's needs are the same, right? So you're kind of helping one
exactly.
person excel in A, but the next person is in F or G or whatever the funnels that they need help in are,
Yes.
kind of wherever they're at, really.
Absolutely. Personal journey. Everyone has individual development goals. And if you don't have, everyone has to have a development goal. That's our priority as well, is like no one is perfect here. Like we're working as a family, as a team. And so,
Kind of put you on the spot just a little bit. If you had to narrow it down to kind of like one skill, one technical skill that you think anybody in sales or marketing pick, I'll let you choose because you have both backgrounds, right? Do you have one particular skill that you think everyone should sharpen their axe on, so to speak, every month, let's call it, every year? What's the one thing you think people should drill down on?
I'll say from a selling perspective, I would say strategic influencing
Okay.
is, and I don't want to use the word negotiation, but it's internal and external. That it's one of the biggest unlocks to ensure that you are successful in your role is
Mm-hmm.
how do you influence for disproportionate resources on your brands or your projects or your business, and learning how to influence and self-reflection on your approach to pushing your projects through is such a crucial um, uh, capability
Yeah.
for an individual in this space. So it's challenging. It's a full, like it's a big part of our weekly calendars and just working through that. I think that's the skill set I would say. Like I wouldn't say like it has to be Excel skills or anything technical. I mean, that is a must, but
Of course.
that I think that that's the piece that everyone is in like a continuous journey to perfect.
I like how you phrased that. You called it social. I think you said social influencing, right? And how it's not just negotiation, at least to me, right? The way that I kind of heard that is that negotiation is like a very finite set of things, but when you add a social component to how you're framing it, it takes into account all of the maybe the misbalance of resources that you mentioned, right? Or any other external factors that that can kind of like either throw you off your game or help you, or it's kind of like being very aware of how you're going about your relationship building in your conversations. Am I understanding that
Yeah.
correctly?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna merge our words here because I said strategic influencing, but social is a big that's the input there, right?
Okay,
Is like
perfect.
you're getting feelers out there, you're empathetic, you're trying to understand both sides, you're because negotiation is really like here's my position, here's your position, and we're gonna work to get to a middle ground,
Right.
that works for both of us with some things that you may have to give up along the way.
Hmm.
Whereas strategic influencing is like, I've got this goal and I'm going to learn and understand around those around me so that I can, navigate to get to where I want to get to.
Let's that's a little bit about the your teams and skill sets and things of that nature. I'm curious about you. What are some things that you're practicing in your role that's helping you stay sharp, that's helping you stay on top of everything that you have going on here? Because I would imagine your plate is pretty full with the position you're in. How are you staying on top of that? How are you staying organized with everything?
Oh, if I wish I had a very clear answer for that. Um, it's like I said at the beginning, right? My skill sets have to change. And the role that I play for the company and for the team is how do I bring outside in focus?
Hmm.
So I need to focus on building that external network in terms of connecting with the right individuals to build e-commerce, not just for our company, but for Canada. So
Hmm.
we need to operate as a community and you need a point person in these companies to help rally for capabilities and resources because it's all based in the consumer. So I think for me in this role is really focusing on that external influencing and networking, I should say, and then bringing that back to the company to ensure that I challenge, I create aspirational goals, and I really move Kenvue along at a faster pace. And so I think that's really where I need to differentiate myself and what I want to work on. And it's a type of selling, but totally completely different within the space and the capabilities we need to bring.
Kind of helps keep you on your toes, and I'm sure that it's something where it's I like to use the example, you have a couple glasses in front of you, right? And it's impossible to
Mhm.
fill every single one, but you can balance how you probably go about your day, your week, your month, and everything in between, right? Just to make sure that you're still progressing forward. There's some sort of progress in everything that you're doing, but maybe it's, hey, I need to pause this or curb this a little bit for a week, right? Be able to kind of
Yeah.
manipulate it a little bit.
When you think about your day to day and in terms of priority is your team up front in the earlier in the week, make sure everyone has their priorities straight. And then, there's always a bit of firefighting through your day or your
Of course.
weeks. So balancing that, but making sure you're ahead of the game to carve out thinking time in your calendar to be able to catch the next week early as fast as possible and reprioritize. I think that'll be a big piece. And there's so many facets to e-commerce or
Yeah.
sales. Like in e-com, there's the customer piece and managing that relationship. There's capability building, like within our supply chain network. There's content capability building, like content and digital media integration.
Hmm.
And our new partners are popping up all the time that we want to make sure we foster those relationships with.
Sure.
So there's different, yeah. You jump around a little bit to on priorities.
I want to dig into the e-commerce side of what you guys do, right? Because traditional selling typically involves like a relationship and, hey, I've got something, I think you want it. There's a lot of that going down the road, right? You add e-commerce on top of that, it almost adds like another layer to the sales cycle, to the selling and everything like that. How are you getting from the product to the sale? I guess is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to ask here. Navigating through extra layers that have to do with e-commerce. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, like maybe we chat for 3 hours on this because I there's so much to unpack. But
Right.
yeah, it's we're on a journey, right?
Hmm.
COVID changed things for consumers,
Yes, absolutely.
and it opened up new doors. Canada is an interesting place where the investment in e-commerce hasn't been as accelerated as it
Okay.
has in other markets, which is a very it's an interesting fact given how developed Canada is. Um, but what's interesting is COVID did force some of those investments, so it opened up new doors.
Hmm.
However, we're still trying to build a talent and a skill set, to your point, in the selling framework on what does this mean, and then how do organizations organize themselves from a resourcing perspective to support that, and where does that job sit? Does it sit with our traditional selling partners? So if you're an account manager, are you what's referred to as an omni manager? So are you responsible for selling product through our brick and mortar sales stores and our e-commerce sales stores? Or do we have specialized e-commerce account managers? Because some of the capabilities and the things that influence that final purchase from the consumer are different levers, and they're
Yep.
new. And that is a lot to learn, to do both. And so organizations are still building themselves different. You talk to any top tier company and they're all structured slightly different on how they resource the retailers. But it's going to constantly change, and I think we have
Yep.
to be okay with that. Is like based on new capabilities being built, that we just need to be able to react in an agile way and support that. But it's definitely a journey.
Yeah.
And there's new things that pop up all the time. I mean, we could again spend a whole other few hours talking about AI and the impact of AI is going to
Oh,
make
that's true.
to the journey. So yeah, I don't know if that fully answers your question, but in terms of just what it takes to get a product to end consumers' hands is changing constantly. It's more competitive, more levers that we need to touch on that
Hmm.
journey. So many influences.
I use Wild West loosely when I talk about
Yes.
e-commerce typically, right? Because I'm sure just like you said, there's a lot more levers, there's a lot more things that can happen in getting from A to B, but
Yeah.
it's not like there's anything that's whatever that journey is, there's probably no absolutely incorrect way to do it. There's probably so many different ways that to skin a cat, so the saying is, right, where you can get the product in a consumer's hands. You can get a product to somebody in a handful of different ways, and I start
Mhm.
thinking about all the things that I'm influenced by from a social perspective.
Mhm.
And so kind of where I'm going with that is you've got your traditional e-commerce, let's call it, right? You go to a website or you go to an app or something like that. And apps probably aren't even traditional still at this point. There's probably still a lot of development that's going into that portion of it. But I also
Mhm.
start thinking about things like, ads and things like that I get on like Facebook or Instagram or the TikTok shop and all that sort of stuff. Are you guys playing in that social space at all? Or are you trying to stick mainly to your traditional e-commerce platforms and your websites and things like that? What's that looking like for you guys? If you're allowed to share, I don't want to give away too many
Yeah.
secrets.
The consumer path to purchase, we call it, it
Okay.
has used to be very linear. And,
Ah.
from a, as I said before, mental availability of our brands and then physical availability of our brands, there was a clear journey on how we needed to connect with the consumer along that space to convert them to, wanting to buy or love our brands or products. Now that path to purchase is like across so many elements, right? They're
Sure.
moving in a zigzag and there's so many touch points that you can reach a consumer today. And so it becomes more complicated on how best to show up to the consumer along those touch points and in what efficient way
Hmm.
that's going to truly make an impact. And layer on retail media networks that are coming out everywhere.
Yep.
Every customer is investing in this space. Every retailer, that just adds more layers, and so it's become. It still is the traditional funnel of moving a consumer, from awareness to seeing the product, but it's changed so much, so much.
If somebody were to approach you looking for advice now to get an e-commerce platform started, and let's say it's not a very big brand, but they've got something that they kind of want to go after, what steps would you tell them to take to help them figure out what their journey is, whether it's a zigzag or something linear or something like that? How would you advise somebody else to kind of get that journey started?
Well, I think it really comes down to the consumer. So the consumer has to be in the center of everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so starting with your consumer is what is the consumer looking for? How can you solve maybe a gap in the marketplace with your offering? And then, from there, how do you layer on reaching them in a way on where they are spending their time? So if your target market is in a certain space, where are those platforms for which they're consuming media or information? And then from there, you can start to think through what is the assortment model that you want to bring onto e-commerce, because that's what really differentiates itself from in store. It should be a unique assortment,
Mm-hmm.
with a different model. The more complicated, like sort of layer on the halo is now how are you going to get the product to the end consumer in the most efficient and profitable way possible?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that the last mile of getting that product to your consumer is the space that is still scaling.
Right.
And Amazon is fastly approaching, you know, creating some scale in that space, but that is one of the most challenging pieces. And so building out the profitability model will only support that cyclical e-commerce growth. But that really is important to reach the end consumer is in a profitable way.
Do you have any particular strategies that you guys are implementing at Kenvue, if you don't mind sharing, that you found to be particularly effective in how this stuff is scaling over the past, X number of years? Is there anything in particular where you're like, this is where we started and this is how we got to the next milestone or goal or whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, without providing any proprietary strategic information,
I understand.
um, yeah, I think we're looking at ways at being innovative with our partnerships with customers, and doing as many tests and learns as possible. I think that's really important. I think that's shareable is you have to do a ton of tests and learns in e-commerce before you scale. So what's working? And we're trying a little bit of everything across supply chain to media to assortment models to promotional models. We're sort of touching everything within the space
Mhm.
to understand what's going to move the needle with our consumer.
Yeah.
And it's at more of a micro level, which is also a new way of thinking in this space. Is traditionally you run a big execution in the brick and mortar space and it's big, there's a return on it, it makes a lot of sense. In
Mhm.
e-commerce, it's small, it's iterative. So I think that strategically is how we need to approach it and where
Yeah.
we're seeing those small successes and then scaling, small successes and scaling.
I love that. Now,
Yeah.
at risk for not running this and turning this into a 3-hour conversation, because I would love to dig into this so much more, because I
Yeah.
find a lot of this fascinating because I have a slight background in e-commerce and getting things off the ground in kind of like a
Yeah.
digital age, right? Much smaller scale than what Kenvue is doing. But I'm interested, are there any particular technologies or particular advancements that are just involved in the e-commerce space in general that have you the most excited about the future of e-commerce? I know you touched on like AI a little bit. Is that the answer? Is there something else on the horizon that kind of everybody's looking forward to?
I think an area that's going to make everyone's, I think allowing us to focus on the strategic element of e-commerce is um, automation and
Okay.
automation of some of the small work that we do, to free up time to grow the top line, right?
Hmm.
So things like, if I could use examples, content development. So we have so many outlets to release content to, and we've got
Hmm.
great content, but it has to be resized, it needs to be created, it needs to be customized, it needs to be, and that's a lot of work, and we want to show this great content, but the requirements across the space and the different media outlets that we work with are just so different. Automation of scraping data to be able to put it into dashboards to make quicker decisions,
Hmm.
on pricing or out of stocks or inventory or any of that, or even consumer listening and trying to understand what's happening with our consumers. There's a few facets of automation that actually really excite me, because I think a lot of our time is spent, it's like, a lot of manual work versus the strategic work of growing the business, building the
Yeah.
customer relationships, things like that I think we're all still building capabilities behind. So I would say that excites me.
The content side of what you just said like hits home with me so hard. Just like
Yeah.
on the side, doing my own sort of content or developing content in the way that it needs to be done is insane how many formats you have to have, right? Because
So many.
you think about like Facebook ads are in like a 4:5 aspect ratio. You've got phones. Everyone scrolls content on phones nowadays that is in,
Yeah.
like a 16:9. It's just, it's
Yeah.
crazy when you start really peeling back the onion layer of what needs to be done. There are a lot of complexities to it, and just what you said, the automation behind that, I'm sure would make you guys and anyone who needs that type of automation, like your workflow just becomes so much shorter, so much quicker, and more efficient at the end of the day.
And you want to be fresh. You want, with things moving so fast, it's not even just even the specs, but the relevancy to
That's a good
something that
point.
happens in the marketplace. So, if something's trending and your product or your brand is super relevant for that, how quickly can we turn around content to ensure that we're talking about that and how we're reaching out to consumers?
Mhm.
So yeah, it can happen so fast. Or did Taylor Swift say that thing about our product that we can
Oh no.
integrate into our content really quickly?
Yeah. How do we sneak this video clip in here and make everything just kind of blow up? Man, that's just
Yeah,
I
with all
I
trademarks in place.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh man, that gets
yeah,
me excited just hearing your excitement behind it, right? I can tell
yeah.
there's a lot of excitement behind your voice, and maybe because it's Taylor Swift or not, but I think there's a lot of excitement behind that because it's one of those things where you walk in each day not knowing full well what will happen, right? You can't just map out your
Yes.
day knowing exactly what will happen, but you know that you've got the passionate people that you work with, the passion that you have for what you do. It all just kind of streamlines up into this exciting challenge of like, okay, here's where we are, here's where we want to go. How are we going to get there? And how do
Yes.
we make it as seamless and as efficient as possible? And I think that that's just for me, that any sort of project that I have that has those elements behind it, I'm like, nothing's off the table at this point. Let's just make it happen.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
just roll up our sleeves and let's get to work here.
Hunger and
Yes.
resiliency and yeah.
Boom. All
Yeah.
all the all the things that you talked about at the beginning. This is
I
like
know.
we've come full circle.
Full circle. I love it.
It's so awesome.
Amazing.
Well, I know we're kind of coming up on time here, and I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us already. I know that I can tell, like I said, that there's a lot of passion that what you have behind that, and I love hearing that from you, and just hearing about the excitement of what you're working on day to day. Maybe not the particulars, right, to make sure we're not giving away any trade secrets, and I'll make sure you keep those to yourself. But just hearing that passion, I think, is exciting, and I think that that's translating really well to everyone who happens to be listening out there. As we wind down, though, I want to kind of give you the floor, if you don't mind. And any sort of like ending advice, last minute advice, things that you would kind of give out to the readers, who may be listening in. What's something that you'd want to tell them, or kind of like industry knowledge you'd want to put out there for anyone who's looking to either get into this space or who is in this space already and is trying to work on developing their own funnel further.
Being a bit more agnostic from some of the specifics in this space and more around maybe your career, and just where you are and what you're trying to develop is, as if I think about my own career in this space, is being open to opportunities to learn constantly, has
Love that.
allowed me the opportunity to get into this space that I am passionate about, because I just followed my curiosity and my hunger to learn. And I don't know if anyone's done those strengths finders, but learner is one of my strengths, and
Mm,
something that that drives me. And it's allowed me to build the skill set and to lead an amazing team that's passionate about making a difference in this space, and building capabilities. So I think just having that natural curiosity and following it, don't be rushed to drive to the top. Take those lateral moves to just grow your base, and what I would refer to as the pyramid of your career. The
yep.
stronger the foundation
Hmm.
that you build, the more stable you are at the top. And so take your time, and and learn and leverage that curiosity.
That's awesome. I think that's a perfect way to kind of like cap off the entire conversation. And like I said, I would love to dig into this, even a little bit more. So, I if you're open to it, we may have to talk about a little reunion tour between you and I, because I would love to kind of continue this conversation maybe in a couple of months and kind of see not only maybe what's changed and what's new about what you guys are working on at Kenvue, but maybe dig into some more specifics around how technology is advancing just in 3 short months, because I'm sure that it will, right?
Yes.
That stuff takes off like a rocket. So, but for the sake of time, we'll kind of end it off here. Meredith, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I loved everything that you said. And like I said before, I can tell that there's a lot of passion behind what you do and everything that you do and whatnot, all the pillars that you mentioned, not only for yourself, but also your team and skill sets and things like that. So I really, really appreciate the conversation. We'll have to look at another one here in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris, for the opportunity to take the soapbox and talk about e-com and the company and careers. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Shout out once again to Meredith for spending some time with us for this fireside chat. I could tell that throughout our conversation, Meredith is incredibly dedicated to her work, not only in her role, but for the people that surround her. And I hope you got a small taste of that as well. If you have a favorite part that you enjoyed, feel free to leave a comment down below and let us know your thoughts on this chat with Meredith. Be sure to like the video, consider hitting that subscribe button, and turn on the notifications so you can be alerted when future chats go live on our channel. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy hunting.